Hello and welcome back to More to the Story. I'm your host, Janna Maron. In addition to this podcast, I also publish a literary arts magazine called Under the Gum Tree, publishing creative nonfiction and visual arts. You can find out all about subscribing and submitting to have your work considered for publication in the magazine at underthegumtree.com. And I'm also, I'm also a book coach and an editor working with women telling true personal stories in whatever form of nonfiction that takes. Sometimes that's memoir, sometimes it's personal essay collection, sometimes it's prescriptive nonfiction like I've been talking about in some of the recent episodes. But whatever nonfiction, true personal story you're writing, I can help you. And if you'd like to talk and get a diagnosis on your book and your project and what might be keeping you from making the progress that you want to be making, you can schedule a 15-minute call with me, a free 15-minute diagnosis call by going to moretothestory.co/book diagnosis. If you think a book outline might help your project, you can get my free book outline formula worksheet at moretothestory.co/book outline. And this podcast is brought to you by Cafe Santoro, which I mention on almost every episode. I think I've done a couple introductions lately and I maybe have forgotten to mention them, but my parents' boutique coffee roastery in Northern California, where you can get the best ever decaf you've ever tried. And if you don't trust me, don't take my word for it, try it for yourself. Get over to cafesantoro.com, and that is spelled CAFFESANTORO because it's Italian and it means coffee the Santoro way. cafesantoro.com/Janna, and you'll get 10% off your first order. Try that decaf, see what you think. And I'm super excited for the episode today. I think by now there's been a couple episodes released where I'm doing interviews with clients, current clients, past clients, and we're talking about their book. We're talking about their experience working with me. We're talking about their writing, publishing journeys. And it's been so wonderful for me, of course, to talk to these women kind of back to back as I've been scheduling and recording these interviews. And just reminding myself of the variety of stories and writing processes and publishing paths, like the diversity of publishing that my clients have pursued really speaks to one of the biggest values that I promote in the work that I do with my clients around there is no one size fits all. There is no one path that everyone should follow to have their book published. And my clients really are a testament to that. So today I have another client interview for you. I'm talking to Barbara Caver. She's a lifelong student of the arts and is an accomplished film and television production executive. She loves traveling, exercising, hiking, dancing, cooking, and eating, as well as writing about all of these things with great enthusiasm, affection, and humor. A Little Piece of Cuba is her first full-length memoir. Raised in South Carolina, Barbara currently resides in Jackson Heights, New York City. And this conversation is really exciting because we're talking about her book, A Little Piece of Cuba, which is out December 2nd. And as far as I can tell, based on the schedule that I have planned for releasing this episode, it's going to be in about a week from now by the time you're listening to this episode. So the book is available for pre-order. I'll share all that information at the end of the episode. But you're getting a little behind the scenes peek to this book, the writing process, how it came to be, how it came to life, the publishing path that Barbara took to get to where she is now, a week out from the release of her book, her first book, her debut book, a memoir, A Little Piece of Cuba. Thanks so much for listening, and here's my interview with Barbara. Hi, Barbara. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Janna. It's great to be here. So excited.
Oh my gosh. I am so excited also to hear all about, I already know all about your book and what's happening, but to have it recorded and ready for podcast listeners and your story is just so amazing. So start off by just giving a little intro to who you are and your book, which is coming out very soon.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Caver. I am a New Yorker. I am a veteran of the film and television industry. And the title of my book is A Little Piece of Cuba, A Journey to Become Cubana Americana. And it comes out December the 2nd from She Writes Press,
Yes.
distributed by Simon and Schuster. So there you
Yes.
go.
Love it, love it, love it. So, how did you come to writing and this book in particular?
So I've been a writer my whole life, started with the diary when I was 9 years old, a lot of creative writing. And then when I moved to New York and went to film school, I really studied a lot of screenwriting in my film world. So
Hmm.
that was always my creative outlet while I was pursuing a career in which is very production and logistics oriented. Having writing as an outlet on the side, I never called it a hobby.
Hmm.
It was always more than just a hobby. Was always a way for me to exercise my creative life.
Hmm.
And then the idea to write a book came actually a very long time ago. I had a lot of people tell me, wow, your screenplays are great, but it's really a book. Like it's
Hmm.
just not something for the screen, the
Tell,
screenplays.
explain that a little bit more. Like, what do people mean when they say that?
A screenplay, to be kind of quick about it, a screenplay is really just a blueprint for a film. So it's
Right.
not necessarily a literary work. So what I know now people were responding to was likely voice and character descriptions and things that I feel are my strengths as a writer that I developed working on A Little Piece of Cuba and subsequent work, and even work before I, short stories and essays and things that are sitting in the bottom of a drawer somewhere
Mhm.
or are on a hard drive somewhere. So, yeah, I got told a long time ago what to do, and just took a long time to actually do it. So,
So you're basically what you're saying about your screenplays is you were putting too much detail in the screenplay.
too much detail and too much sort of editorializing,
Uh-huh.
too much guidance. It's like you've got to, in a screenplay, you have to leave a lot of room to let the other artists and the other filmmakers come into the story and not just make their mark, but it's a blueprint. So they
Hmm.
then have to, it's the best way that I can think of to describe it. Then you have your people who are building the house, and they're all doing their part and building part of it to create a cohesive whole. So
Right.
I was building a house, and I think that's the way I like to think of it anyway.
That's
So
really interesting. I don't think I've ever heard you talk about that before. That's really interesting.
yeah, it was something that I, always kind of sat in the back of my mind. But when I met you, it was about like, okay, it's about writing a book, which is
Yeah.
something I had never really done before.
Yeah.
And never really, thought about where to start or what to do.
So you were writing these screenplays and people would read them and say, this is great, but it's a book. And you hadn't really thought about writing a book, but then how did this idea of like, okay, your screenplays aren't screenplays, they're books, but doesn't sound like any of those screenplays turned into this book that's getting published. So talk about that journey and that bridge.
Well, one of them almost did.
Okay.
When I was in film school, I did write an outline for a movie about Cuba.
Okay.
And it's the funniest movie. It's an outline. It never became a screenplay. And it's the funniest thing. It's like these two kids are in the Mariel boat lift, and it's like this like Flight of the Navigator type adventure story. Um, you wonder why it never got written. Not me. Not my story, not even remotely my mother's story, but but there was always a story calling to me, is kind of the point. And I think
Mhm.
it was going down these paths of like, okay, all right, I'm in film school, I'm working in this medium, let's do this. And then when I started working in documentaries, the same thing started, I started asking a question. It's like, should I start interviewing my family members? Yeah, I don't know. That didn't feel right either, because I think what I realized eventually, and really it was the COVID lockdown that gave me some time to really kind of reflect. I think I needed a creative challenge. It wasn't just going to be enough for me to sit in my room and continue to just put words on a page. It really was a challenge to present it and work with a developmental editor, work in a community, and really try to get something finished.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, the story that popped up was, I have to tell the Cuba story. I have to tell my Cuba story. And the idea of doing it as a memoir in creative nonfiction, I was like, wait a second, maybe I finally figured out how to tell the story. So it's not a very clear path. It was just sort of like churning in the background for a very long time.
Yeah,
So
because had you been attempting to write it fiction previously?
I never attempted to write it fiction beyond the
Okay.
screenplay. At one point,
Okay.
I think I dusted off the screenplay, made it a little more mature. It still didn't go anywhere.
Okay.
And I think, and then I also had started doing a few. In fact, so a lot of the material that I presented to you in one of our initial meet and greet phone calls were these sort of personal essays that I
Mm-hmm.
had started, throwing together. And I think I sent you some of that. And some of that is the basis for what is in the final manuscript for A
That's
Little Piece of
awesome.
Cuba. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So, what's the summary? Like, give us the pitch. What's the book about?
The book is about how I connected to my Cuban heritage after a 5-day trip to Havana.
And all of
That's it.
the adventures that happen as a result.
Yeah. I like to say that A Little Piece of Cuba is a travel memoir because we
Hmm.
actually, my husband and I actually went to Cuba for five
Hmm.
days. So you
Hmm.
do get to experience the trip to Cuba through the
Hmm.
book, but then
Hmm.
you also get to go time traveling with me through memories. You meet my family members and you see how I reconstructed my Cuban identity, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is so good. I just, I mean, I loved reading it while you were working on it, and now I can't wait to read the final version of it. So,
I can't wait for you to read the final version. It's actually quite different
is
from
it?
the last version you read. Yeah, I'm going to be I think you're going to be very happy with it.
Uh-huh.
I'm also going to be very interested to hear what you think and what jumps out. And, I will say the first chapter has changed very little, and the last chapter has not changed at all.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so that's really interesting. Talk a little bit more about that. Like, what was the journey from, okay, I'm going to write this book? How long were you trying to do it maybe before you started working with me? And then from where we got it to where it is now, like just that whole journey.
Oh yeah, that journey it's like that could be a book in and of itself, Um I really think it was I had started in when I turned 40 in 2019, I had started a little blog, started writing because I was like I want to get some of this stuff out into the world. That's like
Hmm.
a step I had never taken as a writer. So I was like, let's put it out there. So I had started writing some of the personal essays. And I also we had been to Cuba in 2017. So that's where I started was let me pick a photo, let me remember, oh, this and the photos that I had taken of the trip, which are now populating my social media accounts, are really they're like little time machines. I go
Hmm.
right back to the trip to Cuba, and then through some of the photos I can go even further back into my childhood, um into my past, into stories, into sights and sounds and images. So much of it is impressionistic. So like I was actually had a conversation just this past weekend with my grandmother Carmelina, and then of course I think I woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning panicking that I was like, wait, I write about all the tiles in the kitchen in her house, and how the tiles when I got to Cuba, I was like, and I saw tiles on the Airbnb, all through the Airbnb, in the floor, where we were staying in Havana, in the bathroom, on the backsplash. And I definitely remember that feeling in Cuba of being swept back to her home.
Hmm.
And I got anchored to this image of the tiles were on the kitchen floor. And then just recently I was like, were they on the kitchen floor? Where were these tiles? So and I think I said this to you at one point in the writing process, it was a couple things. It was about telling this story, but also about really about learning what creative nonfiction actually is, for me, and defining that, and realizing that what I needed to lean in on, and what I try to lean in on in the book, is the magic in walking into a strange place in a foreign land where I don't speak the language, and feeling a deep connection to my grandmother's house.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that's
getting
something.
chills.
Yeah. So, and that's something too, that when, someone, because we know it's going to happen, someone's like, Barbara, the tiles, what are you talking about? What tiles? I'm going to be like, there were tiles somewhere in the house. There was, but the bigger thing was, as soon as I walked into the apartment in Cuba and followed our Airbnb host up the stairs, I was like, whoa, this is all so familiar. And I knew, like, real memories came to life. So okay, fine, there were maybe the tiles were on the floor, maybe they were somewhere else, it doesn't matter. There was a connection,
right? So you started writing on the blog with these photos, and then what?
Actually never posted anything on the blog with the photos.
Okay.
I just kept everything kind of off to the side, because every single time I tried to write something, I realized I didn't have any kind of like spine connecting it. It's like I didn't have any reason to write other than, oh, here's this cool picture, here's the connection. So it felt a little prescriptive. It felt a little, blunt, if you will. It didn't feel like it had anything. It didn't feel like it was bringing any meaning, beyond, it didn't feel like it would, just didn't feel like it would mean anything to anybody else. So I never posted them, because I felt like some of the other stuff that I posted on my blog, which was mostly fiction or thinly veiled fiction, was it got there in terms of like, I've made a point, I said what I wanted to say, this will mean someone else will connect with this. So that's why I felt like, I didn't know it. None of this stuff ever comes to you it certainly never comes to me in like words. It came to me in a feeling of like, I have to do something more with this. Sure. Yeah. Let's not write the Marielle boat lift meets Flight of the Navigator. Yeah, let's not do that. But let's also not just do like a photo and a fun story about a trip to Havana, and how the taxi driver, told us all these funny stories about the beach, and how I was sitting there in the back of the car, remembering all these amazing stories of being on the beach with my mother, and how connected, how the beach really soothed her, and how it was a happy place for her, and how those became good memories for me. And I'm like, how do I put all of that together into one cohesive thing? And so that was really what I was looking for when I came to you with all of these pieces. And then that was the first thing you and I did, was you just said the words I needed to hear, like, write everything. Because I was stopping myself from writing. I was like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. I'm just going to leave this little thing here. The opening chapter of the book that talks about the airport, and how I literally got off the plane and thought the airport smelled familiar, was one of those little essay thingies. I don't have any photos of the airport, of course, because the last thing you do is try to take photos of the airport in Havana.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea. But I just had, what I had was powerful, of course, those powerful sense memories. So that was one of those pieces. So when I put that, when you said, just stop overthinking it and just throw it all out there, then I think about however many months it was later, I dump 30,000 words on your plate, and I'm like, here,
you make sense of this.
You tell me what this is, It did become very clear to me early on that it was definitely like, sure, it's good to know that, it's good to make sure names are spelled correctly. It's good to think about like I think I remember the tiles were on the floor of the kitchen. Should I check that fact? Nah. That's, it was good. It was a good learning process for me to realize, like, oh no, this is not just, you know, on May something something 1959, they left
Mm-hmm.
Cuba. It
Mm-hmm.
was more it was had more heart than that. It
Right.
wasn't just a factual genealogical, like, how to or something like that.
Right.
So
Which is the point of writing these kind of stories. We do have to kind of get over that hurdle of the chronological timeline and clinging to that, and the how important we kind of make it in our own minds, when it's like, actually what is really at stake here is the meaning that we make of all of these experiences, and how we internalize and interpret, and how they like shape us and become influence us and our ancestors, and they shape us and influence us, and then this cycle, right, of becoming who we are as people, as humans, and how we interact with the world.
exactly, it was that thread and that perspective, and it's not a thread, it's like that's what the book is. The book
Right.
is that, like personal, like you get to be in my head the whole time.
Right.
Sorry. And it's that sort of emotional connection. And I
Mm-hmm.
tell you, I know that now that I've got, beta readers and other authors who've been generous to blurb and early reviews coming in, like, I know I've done something right when they tell me, oh, my mom came from Poland, and she had a hard time learning English, and I would hear her speaking in Polish, but only when she was really upset.
Mm-hmm.
So if they start telling me stories about their experiences, and
Mm-hmm.
it's always got a heavy emotional undercurrent. It's
Mm-hmm.
not even an undercurrent, it's like they're kind of missing the fact that the emotion is like right on the top, like the icing of the cake. It's like scrape off the icing and go straight back to the cake. It's like, yeah, all the icing's off the cake.
Right.
It's like that's really leading that's really leading what you're talking about here, because,
Right.
like, forget the details, you really felt something when you heard
Right.
your mother speaking Polish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you finish a draft, and then you are now getting published with She Writes Press, which I think, I am talking to Margaret in a couple weeks. So between you and Margaret, you two are the first and only so far, coming from More to the Story nonfiction bootcamp, who are publishing with She Writes, and they're a hybrid press. So talk a little bit about how you made that decision and what the experience has been like.
I made the decision to go with She Writes Press because I was so done with submitting to traditional presses. And I just feel like I just this is just classic. Barbara cannot sit still and cannot be patient. There were other things I wanted to do. This was taking too long. Self-publishing felt like a huge hurdle for me. It
Yeah.
felt like it was going to be a big learning curve. Um, and I didn't know anything about She Writes Press. That, like, talk about like the magic woo woo factor, that came to me through another author, Robin Merle, who is in my cohort this year with She Writes. So her book, I believe, is out very soon. It's her second book with She Writes Press. She and I met through a women's professional networking organization here in New York. And she told me, and that she wasn't even someone I would necessarily have met through that organization, aside from the fact that they had an authors group. So I joined the
Okay.
authors group, meet her, and was basically doing what I'm doing now, getting on the Zoom call, meeting all of these other authors in various phases of writing all kinds of different books, and in various phases of experience and publishing, and with a lot to offer. All women, all professionals, all very driven. And Robin said, and I immediately start complaining about, I've my book is sitting with one press for 6 months and another press, and And I very much understand the reasons why that happens, especially given that this book was finished coming out of the pandemic and
Yeah.
the very turbulent economic times that we've experienced, and specifically what's been going on in publishing. Like, you can tell me the logistical reasons why, and I still am impatient.
Of course.
I felt like I had been handed like a magical like portal into a new world when Robin Merle said to me, have you ever heard about She Writes Press? And I went on to their website where they very clearly explain what hybrid publishing is. Brooke Warner, who's the publisher, has several TED Talks and a couple of different resources that are publicly available. You can go and get some more info. So I did a crash course on hybrid publishing and submitted my book that day through Submittable. So here I was sitting on Submittable again, like, oh, they're this innovative hybrid publisher who's really trying to do things differently in the publishing space, and I got to go on Submittable. It's okay. It's okay.
It is kind of the industry standard for submissions.
I forgave them. Yes. So after a review period, I was contacted by Brooke and offered a contract. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And the experience with them has been what you hoped it would be?
Yeah, the experience with them has been great. They've been very they took care of all the things that I wanted them to take care of, all those things that felt like it was going to be way too into the weeds and way too much of a deep dive for me to tackle if I were self-publishing, and probably would have taken an immense such long, a much longer time. They took care of all of those things. And to go back to my previous analogy of filmmaking and bringing people in to help you build the house, that's definitely what they did. They brought the cover design. They brought in a proofreader who could help with some of the Spanglish that's in the book. And then they helped with, they navigate through the metadata and they do a lot of education around this, how the sales force works, and, the contract negotiation, everything like that. So definitely, I've only got one experience working with a publisher, and so far so good. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I sort of jumped over this part, just like finishing your draft. So I want to circle back and ask you to talk a little bit more about that process and what you feel like was the biggest hurdle that you faced in just getting to a draft, and maybe also what you felt like you were getting as support through your work with me and more to the story community.
I would say, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, that once you and I had figured out, well, really, once you had guided me towards that art, that bigger story, that why am I writing this, getting to that first draft and the second and the third drafts, that was easy. That was not hard. That was just sitting down and doing the time and being willing to try something, take it out. And then as I got the book finished and started submitting it around, and this is actually, Janna, this is the story of what has happened since the last time you read a draft of the book.
Okay.
I started talking to my mother and my family about the book, and started letting them know that it existed, and they started, and of course, with the pandemic kind of ending, everybody's like, let's get together. And all of a sudden I'm meeting and seeing people, and, distant cousins and relatives and friends that I haven't seen in years. And some relatives of mine that I have never even met, and actually never even heard of, didn't even knew they existed, but they're coming to New York. People wanted to connect following, reopening after COVID. And, an aunt calls, my grandmother calls me, someone, it's like, oh yes, here's exchange phone numbers and go meet. And that was where I also opened up about the book and got more information. And I got a lot of information from all of those different encounters. And I think I probably added maybe less than 10% of it to the book, because I knew what was sort of just their story, sort of family genealogy, really mythology, if you will,
Right.
and what was really relevant to what I had said. Because by the time
Sure.
I got to that first, but by the time I got to the last draft that you read, I knew exactly what this book was about. So that was
Hmm.
really what happened. That was really what has happened until the final draft
Hmm.
was sort of those fine tuning, hearing other personal stories that refined and really informed and really really contributed to the voice of experience in the book. So I wasn't just talking from the version of myself that went to Cuba in 2017. I
Right.
also was talking from, from me now, and how,
Right.
so so there's a night as I'm recording the audiobook and now having to read every word out loud. I'm realizing there is very much there's present me appears. So you get to see that it's like this journey is actually still continuing if you read the book closely enough.
Right.
Um, so that's so that that so that is that is the version of the book that got submitted to She Writes. And aside from adding a few little disclaimers, that is the version that will be, and of course correcting like typos and all of my Spanish words, because I do not, heaven forfend I go find an enye anywhere. And accentos totally dropped. But that's the book that's going to be on shelves on December 2nd. There
Hmm.
you go.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And what about your experience in the More to the Story community? How was that supportive to you while you were writing?
I call the more to the story community my creative Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
It's really, I'm incredibly grateful to the community for being supportive in a very it's we protect each other, but we don't coddle each other,
Hmm.
and I think that is valuable,
Hmm.
because I think what I have seen as I've gotten into, the author and writer community is that there's a lot of coddling,
Mm.
um, and a lot, and there is such a fine line, to walk between making sure people feel protected, especially authors who are women. We feel protected and supported as we're telling our stories, but not like, don't handle you can't handle it with kid gloves. You
Right.
can't handle either your work or yourself in too much of a precious way.
Right.
And I think um that's the biggest thing I've gotten out of the community is
Hmm.
that honest, protective, authentic support.
Hmm. That's such a really beautiful way to describe it.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy to hear because I think that's, I probably would never have described it in that way, but I think you nailed exactly what I've tried to foster and create is a place where everyone who's participating feels safe. They have a safe place to um, talk about their work and process things that come up while you're writing, which happens. Like you're going to write your true personal story, you're going to face some emotions that maybe you haven't faced for a while, and those are going to surface, and you're going to have to process that while you're still trying to move forward and make progress on your project.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
but in a way that has like a realistic support foundation around it. Like we're going to be safe and protected here, but exactly what you said, there's still this element of, and this is what it's like out in the real world kind of thing.
And how are you? And I think the biggest question that I ask myself, aside from what would Janna do, is is how am I, careful? How am I, like, am I coddling myself? Because coddling to me always indicates fear, and it's like,
Mm,
and then you got to go to Liz Gilbert's thing of like, fear's got to sit in the back seat. You can be there, but you can't drive, and you can't control the radio, and you can't have a say as to where we're going. And so then it's a question of like, And I do this wrong every day. Every day I'm like, I have this like push pull argument with myself, and it takes a long time. Well, it doesn't take a long time, but there's always a moment of like, wait, where is this really coming from? And I feel like I got the what would Janna do question is, it gets me to that point of like, you know, okay, I'm just scared of this, and I'm
Mm.
scared of this particular thing, and why. And I think there's a lot of so-called support out there that just lets people go snuggle up into their warm blankets and not do anything about it. And
Mm.
sometimes there's a time, and you and I definitely know, like, anytime you need to come over to hide under the bed with me, feel free. Like, we'll we love a warm blanket and more to the story, but we also know it's like there's times you got to get out and throw off the blanket and get out there, otherwise the story just doesn't get told.
Yeah. Um, I've referenced the inside joke of what would Janna do a couple times, so I need you, since you're someone who, I think you're probably someone who helped coin that phrase in the
I
community.
totally coined it. It is
Okay.
inspired. Listen,
You're going to take credit for it.
I
Awesome.
totally, not only am I taking credit for it, I remember exactly, although this could be like the tiles in the kitchen, I remember exactly the context in which it came up. It
Okay.
was it was my second deadline with you, and there had been the life had gotten in the way. I had a goal for myself, and I had been very good about making sure, in terms of word count. And there were a few things that I had wanted to go back and revise, and a couple things I just wanted to throw out there as like other questions,
Okay.
other things. So I had been very good about being on top of my schedule and getting my word count done, and I was on a good track, and I was actually a little ahead of the game. And then life intervened. There were several things that kind of piled on top of each other, and I missed, I would say, close to a solid week of writing time. And it was like maybe a day or two before my deadline, and I had gotten back on my feet and had gotten a little caught up, probably through, I probably should have just like wrapped up in a blanket, but no, I like bullheaded my way through to try to get to my deadline, so that I wouldn't then start yelling at myself
Uh-huh.
for not making my goal. And about 2 days before the deadline, I had a thought that I would email you and say, hey, Janna, I'm really sorry. I'm going to miss the deadline. I don't have enough stuff done. I'm not where I wanted it to be. I wanted to have more material ready for you to look at. I've done the revisions. And that's when I was like, no. Janna would actually, the question I had for myself was, would Janna want to see that? And then I was like, well, yeah, and if I would not want to see that if I were Janna. And what would Janna do? Janna would turn in the document on time as is, whatever I had.
Yeah.
And then I think I went to our community office hours and told the story there. I don't think I even told the story to you in the email. I just said, here's my material,
Yeah.
and bye, and we'll
Yeah. Which I think it's like such a perfect uh like illustration of exactly one of the things I try to foster with you and my clients around done is better than perfect.
Yep.
And I'm not the person who coined that phrase for sure, but so often we allow like everything that you were just saying around, oh, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do this, I wanted to have more, and like we allow that to kind of cycle in our mind around these are all the reasons why I can't do the thing, when actually you have enough. Like you had plenty of material. It's going to be worthwhile to get the feedback on the material that you had and apply it to all the stuff you still wanted to do. And you're still going to have a third deadline. And there's plenty of time for all that stuff that you feel is still not done or whatever. And instead of using that to talk yourself out of it, you just kind of buckled down and like did it anyway.
And I sent it, and I didn't make any excuses, and then I whined about it in the community office.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Which is what we're there for.
What it's for. And that was one of the most victorious office hours, because I think
Yeah.
it was like, not only did I get to take a victory lap for doing that, I think everybody else celebrated along with me. And I think they all took away a lesson for themselves. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, how do I apply this in my life? Because, this is why we're here. This is
right.
part and parcel.
That's right. I love that. And yeah, exactly. And that's a big part of the reason why I think the community is so important too, is how much you guys learn from each other. Like you're the one who had that experience, but you come to the group, you share about it, and everyone else is, it's the same thing we're doing when we're writing our books, because everyone else is seeing themselves in that experience you just shared about facing these hurdles and overcoming them, and how can they do it too, because you're giving everyone else permission to also overcome whatever it is that they need to overcome.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love all that. Well, thank you for sharing. That's really great. So where are you now with so we're recording this on October 22nd. I wish I could tell you when it's going to release, but I can't yet. I will have that information very soon. But it'll either be just before or kind of coincide with your book release. I want to plan for that for sure. So what are we, just like 6 weeks out from your book release?
Yep, 6 weeks out from publication. Yep.
Okay, and what are you working on right now? What's on your plate as you prepare for that?
Well, aside from the fact that I have a whole box of books,
Yes,
right here next to me.
hold one up.
Oh, hang on, I got to dig one out.
Because we do have a video version of this. Love it. Awesome. So pretty. I love your book cover. It's gorgeous.
And this is the final version. There's no like press thing, no nothing. It's like, this is the final version, and it's here. So it is currently, the flying monkeys have gone out into the world to all the warehouses, and that's what the book is doing. What I am doing is I am full steam ahead on the publicity campaign.
Right.
I'm doing podcast interviews. I'm preparing invitations and social media graphics to start announcing my book tour events in, are we 5 cities? We're 6 cities.
Awesome.
And there's a concentration of events in between December the 4th and December the 16th. And then there's a few events happening in January and February. So cool. Getting all those graphics together, staying on top of social media, doing podcast interviews, and I'm writing some personal essays that I'm hoping will get placed in places like Lit Hub or Refinery 29, and just talking about themes, related to the book, mostly travel and what it's like being a woman telling her own story.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
That's so exciting. It's so exciting. Oh my gosh, Barbara, it's been such a joy to have you here and talk about your journey. I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited for you. Where can people find more about you and your book? So my website, A Little Piece of Cuba, there is a whole page dedicated to the book on my website, which is www.barbaracaverauthor.com. And the book is currently available wherever books are sold, and for pre-order. And then it actually it lands in your inbox. It lands on the shelves. It'll be available for download, and we will have the audiobook available on December the 2nd. So, awesome. Exciting. Thank you, Barbara. I'm so excited. All right. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you again, Barbara, for joining me. Such a wonderful conversation. You can find out more about Barbara and her projects and her book, of course, at her website, barbaracaver.com. She's also on Substack, which we failed to talk about in the conversation. Not sure how that happened, but Barbara shares a lot of her adventures on Substack at barbaracaver.substack.com. Tiny Escapes with Barb is what she calls her Substack. And so you can keep in touch with her by subscribing and following her there. This podcast episode was brought to you, of course, by Cafe Santoro, your friendly reminder to go check out my parents' boutique coffee roastery, cafesantoro.com/Janna, where you can get 10% off your first order. You can follow me on Instagram at Janna Marlise. You can follow Under the Gumtree on Instagram at Under Gumtree. And the theme song was written and performed by Janna Maron. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. And I'll talk to you again very soon on the next episode of More to the Story.